Alright, we're in Book 1 of the Aeneid, in line 113. We've just been reading about how the ships are being tossed around in the ocean by the storm that Aeolus has conjured up, and they're getting wrecked here and there and on the shoals and on the reefs and everywhere. So we're continuing talking about ships in line 113. Unam, which the book tells you is unam nawim, one ship, and you'll notice it's accusative. So when you get your accusative first, you always have to keep it sort of in the back of your mind. You're waiting for the subject and you're waiting for the verb. But something verbs one ship is what we can kind of remember. 1. Quae licios fidumque vehebat oronten. So quae is a relative pronoun, right, and it refers back to the unam. One ship which. So when we're talking about this grammatically, we say unam is the antecedent, A-N-T-E, antecedent. It comes before the quae. One ship which, licios is accusative. So again, we're waiting for our subject. Fidum que, is accusative. Vehebat, well now we have our verb. Vehebat, veho means to sort of carry something. Sometimes it means to drag. It's the word you use when you talk about people who are in a vehicle. So one ship which was transporting or was carrying the Lycians and Fidum Orontem. Orontem is this guy named Orontes, and it should be E-N at the end. I know that looks really strange. That's the Greek accusative. Just like some words in English that are, if they're foreign words, we keep a little bit of their foreignness, like jalapeno has that -nye in it. Greek words in Latin, when you make them accusative, sometimes you keep the Greek accusative. So N is like the M in Latin. So one ship, which was carrying the Lycians and faithful Orontes. So he's just a Trojan guy who's important. Not too important. Ipsius ante oculos ingens a vertice pontus. Ipsius is genitive. It's one of those genius dati words that I've mentioned before, where every other ending is a normal, like us, e, o, o ending. Just the genitive is ius. So of that guy, and the book tells you Ipsius is sometimes a word for master, like of the most important guy, that guy. So this refers back to Aeneas. Of Aeneas, right, of that guy. Ante means before, and it always takes an accusative, which is nice because the next word is accusative. Oculos, before the eyes of that guy. And we still haven't gotten our verb. Ingens, finally the ns, tells us it's nominative singular. So here's at least an adjective describing our subject, a huge something. A vertice. Vertice is like vertex, the highest point. So from the highest point, and the book tells you can translate it high above. And then pontus is sea, and that's nominative, so it goes with ingens. We still don't have a verb though. So a huge sea is verbing one ship, or before the eyes of he himself, of the master, a ship which was carrying those people. We still don't know what it's doing. And finally we get our verb, in pupem ferret. Pupem is the back of a ship. In English we call it the poop deck, and it has nothing to do with poop. It's because of the Latin word pupem. It's the stern, the back side, so not the front of the ship. So on the stern, ferret, it strikes. And the sea is the thing that's striking. So a huge sea, or maybe it's probably a better way to translate that because that sounds strange. Gotta grab my book. So it's striking one ship, which was carrying the people, before the eyes of Aeneas himself, right, of the master himself, on the stern, on the backside of the ship. Just a sea. Okay. You could say the huge sea, the great sea was striking. Excutitor pronusque magister volvitur in caput. So excutitor is passive because of the tor, and the book tells you there's an understood nawi. So he is cast out from the ship is what it means, but I wouldn't translate that if you were on the AP test because it doesn't say nawi. That just kind of helps you understand, like, is he being cast out of the sea, out of the ship, what? Pronusque, pronus, we get the word prone from it in English. Prone means you're laying on your face, like on your front side, as opposed to supine, which means you're laying on your back, looking up. So pronus in Latin means like leaning forward or looking kind of face down. Magister looks like teacher, but magister, what it really means is one person who's in charge of a lot of other people. So sometimes you can translate it master, sometimes you can translate it like a teacher. I am in charge of a whole bunch of students. And when you're talking about ships, it means the captain, because he is the person in charge of every person on the ship. So when you see magister, think captain. Volvitur is again passive. Someone is turned. In caput means on their head, and in English we say headlong. The que here really connects the two verbs, excutitor and volvitur. The leaning forward captain is cast out and sort of turned, or volvitur is that idea of like he's falling forward and now he's in caput, he's headlong, which means his head is down. So volvitur is that idea of turning from head up to head down. We're talking about Orontes. So the ship that we've just been talking about, it's hit on its stern, and the leaning forward captain, so he's probably like looking over the side or something, he is cast out and turned over headlong. You could also say for in caput, just on his head. But in English we have this nice word, headlong, which is a nice word. I like it. Okay, so Orontes is overboard. Ost, elam ter fluctus ibidem torquit agens circum et rapitus vorat aequore vortex. Alright, so we'll start with ost, which is a sort of fancy way to say but or said. Elam is accusative because of your and the book tells you that's a ship. But that one, ter is like bis. Bis means 2 times. We had, Juno was promising Iolus 2 times 7 nymphs, or that she had 2 times 7. So ter is just 3 times. Fluctus is wave, and here it's nominative. Ibidem, or ibidem, means in the same place, it's adverb. Torquit just means to turn, and we've seen that a few times now. Agens is nominative, so agens and fluctus go together, even though they're very far apart. And circum just means around. So but, and we need our nominative, the agens fluctus, the driving wave. And agens, the ns tells you it's a present participle, it's nominative singular. The driving wave turns that ship around in the same place 3 times. So the captain's overboard, but the wave keeps turning the ship, and it turns it 3 times around in the same place. Et rapidus vorat aequore vortex. Rapidus is nominative, us. Vorats are verb with a T. Vorat means it swallows. Aequore is ablative, and the book tells you ablative place where, so sort of in the aequore. And vortex, we finally get our our other nominative. So rapidus describes the vortex. Rapidus, it looks like rapid. I guess you could say rapid, but the book says swift or whirling or consuming. And I picked consuming, I like that. And the consuming, a vortex isn't a vortex, it's a whirlpool. The consuming whirlpool swallows, there's an understood it, right? It swallows it up in the depths or in the water, in the sea. Or in the waves, you could say. Or the iquos, or the iquor is the ocean. Okay, so Orontes is chucked out of the ship, but then the ship twirls around 3 times, but then it's sucked down into the whirlpool. Apparent, and there's a typo, it should be APP and not ADP. It's not really a typo, it's just a different way of spelling it. Apparent rari nantes in gurgite vasto. Arma virum tabulaeque et Troia Gaza perundas. So apparents are verb, they appear. Rari nantes. And rari, the book tells you, it means men. Rari means scattered about. We get rare from that word. Or like dispersed. And the book says you can translate it here and there. Nantes, that nt, again, is telling you it's a present participle, and no nare means to swim. So they appear, swimming men here and there. So swimming men appear here and there in Gurgite Vasto, and this tells you where they are. In the sort of wide open abyss for Gurgite. Gurgite and Vorex are synonyms. So really, you can't say whirlpool twice. So you need to find another word for whirlpool. So the book says gulf or abyss. So either one of those. So men are like popping up out of the ship's been swallowed and it's been destroyed, and men are sort of popping back up out of the ocean. And they're not the only thing. Arma virum tabulaeque et Troia Gaza perundas. Arma virum should immediately set off your mind of the very first words of the Aeneid. So he's kind of calling that back to mind. Arma virumque cano Troiaeque primus abundis, etc. Except the virum here is really virorum. It's not the accusative, it's the genitive plural. The weapons of men, tabulae are planks, are boards, and Troia Gaza is treasure. So like Trojan treasure. Perundas is where they're appearing, or like what they're going through the waves. The arma, the book tells you, it means not like metal armor, but probably wooden armor, or not wooden armor, but shields made out of wood, or leather armor, like straps and helmets and stuff that would float. The book also mentions that this A in Gaza, the first A, was going to be long by position. Because remember, Z's are like double consonants. So if you see that when you're scanning, Z's and X's, even though it's really one letter, it works as 2 consonants when you're scanning. So men, or swimming men, appear here and there in the sort of gaping abyss, and the weapons of men and planks and Trojan treasure appear, is the idea, through the waves. Everything's popping up from the ship. Yam walidam Ilionei navem iam fortis Acati, et qua vectus abbas et qua grandaevus aletes vincit hiems. Yeah, easy now. Validam is, of course, accusative. Ilionei is genitive of Ilioneus, who is a Trojan. And I don't know anything about him, so you don't have to know anything about him, except that he's a Trojan. Navem is another accusative, so validam must go with navem. The strong ship of Ilioneus. And then we have this yam again, so we've got a little bit of an anaphora. So now this happens, now this happens. Now of brave Achates, who is again a Trojan. There's an understood ship again. So we have again our accusative first. It's good to read from left to right and you just keep it in the back of your mind. Something verbs the strong ship of Ilioneus now, and now the ship of fortis, you might say brave instead of strong, Achates, so you don't repeat yourself. Or you could pick another word for validam. Stout or mighty, says the book. Oh, book. Et ex qua vectus abbas, and from which, because qua is ablative, so you can say that from in front of it, and from which vectus, there's an understood est, and then abbas is another Trojan, from which abbas is carried, or you might say not from which, you might say in which would make more sense, and the ship of brave Achates, in which abbas is being carried, and in which grandaevus, Iwus means age, and grand means great, so he is great aged, or you just say aged aletes, who is a Trojan. And then it's another example of anaphora, et qua this, et qua that. So we have a yam yam and then two et quas, little parallelism. Vincit hiems. Hiems is the word for winter, but it's also the word for a storm. So storm makes more sense here. The storm conquers. And now we can go back and put together our sentence. Now the storm conquers now the strong ship of Ilioneus, now of brave Achates, in which abbas is carried, and in which aged aletes, you have to understand, is carried. So in which they're hanging out. Laxis laterum compagibus omnes accipiunt inimicum imbrem remusque fatiscunt. Alright, laxis means loose, like lax. Laterum, we've seen latus a lot, I feel like probably 2 or 3 times. Latus lateris is neuter, and third declension. So this is an accusative, it's genitive plural, of the sides. And compagibus goes with laxis. And remember, is and ibus often go together, because they're both ablative plural, just different declensions. Compagibus, or joints, seams, or fastenings. And I wrote all of those down because I had trouble with this sentence. I don't know many of these words, and I kept having to go back and look them up. Like compagibus. I don't know if I've ever seen that before except in the Aeneid. So the book says this is ablative of means or an ablative absolute. So if you want to take an ablative of means, you can just say like with the loose fastenings of the sides, or an ablative absolute you would say with the fastenings of the sides having been loosened. Omnes, and the book tells you it means ships. All the ships, accipiunt, that means that they receive. They receive the inimicum imbrem, which is the hated or hostile rain. Imber is rain. So it's storming, and the ships are falling apart, which is what the laxis to compagibus means, right? The seams or the joints of the ship are coming apart at the sides. And the ships are taking on rain, and rimisque fatiscunt. Rimisque is an ablative of means or manner. They split with cracks, like by means of cracks, or with fissures. They are split with fissures, or with cracks, which is not good for a ship. Interia, magno miscere murmure pontum, which I hope you can hear that alliteration. Magno miscere murmure pontum. Missam hiemem sensit Neptunus, etc. Alright, interia is a great transition word. Meanwhile, think about inter, it means in between, right? It's like in the meanwhile. And what we have here is some indirect statements. And that really goes down with, in 125, sensit Neptunus. Neptune sensed that something was happening. So we're looking for our subject's accusative, and our verb is infinitive. And if we go from not magno, blah, 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 miscere is a passive infinitive. Remember, they end in eyes. So miscere is the present, and then miscere is the passive. So to be mixed. So he feels, and this is present tense sensit. Neptune, meanwhile, feels, and our subject's accusative, pontum, that the sea is being mixed around, right? It's being stirred, magno murmure, with a great murmur, with a great roar. Murmure is onomatopoeia, because roars sound like murmur, murmur. The book says that this is an ablative of attendant circumstance or manner. So either it's being mixed in the manner of a big roar, or the circumstances around it, right? The attendant circumstances are that there is a big roar. I can't remember the last time I saw an ablative of attendant circumstance. So it's quite an exciting sentence. Emissamque hiemem. So he senses that the sea is being mixed with a great roar, and he senses the sent forth storm. So that's just accusative because it's the thing that he senses. There's no infinitive there. Et, and we're still in our indirect statement. So our subject's accusative and our verb is infinitive. Emis stagna refusa vadis, graviter commotus. Imis is ablative plural. Stagna is still waters. And it's neuter plural. Right, stagnum is, I guess, a still water, but it's probably not singular ever. So still waters, refusa, and there's an understood esse. Refusa esse is that perfect passive infinitive. And it's our infinitive here with our sensit. Neptune senses all these things, and that still waters, you make it passive, have been poured out, and your ablative imis vadis, it's an ablative of separation from the deep depths is what it means, which I like, the deep depths. Graviter commotus. Commotus is nominative, so it describes Neptune, greatly moved or disturbed. So he senses these things greatly disturbed. And so commotus refers back to Neptunus. Et alto prospiciens summa placidum caput extulit unda. So prospiciens is our present active participle. NS tells you it's nominative singular. And the book told me that alto is ablative of place. We're looking out over the sea. He summa placidum caput extulit unda. He extends, extulit, right? He brings it out. His placidum caput, his peaceful head. Placidum can mean calm, right? His calm, quiet head. And the summa and undis, these would be long A's, summa, unda, from the sort of tops of the waves. So he peeks out, basically. He senses these things while he's under the water, and he comes out to see what's going on. Summa, all the way to the end here, this is a nice little word picture. His head is coming out from the waves, so you can imagine the waves are sort of surrounding his head as it's coming out of the water, and you can see summa and unda are surrounding the placidum caput. So it's a nice little word picture where the caput's kind of in the middle of this wave. It's interesting juxtaposition, I guess, of comotus and placidum. Right, comotus means disturbed or moved, and placidum means calm. So he has these two things going on. He is disturbed in his spirit, but is outwardly calmed, is the idea. So his head is calm, but inside he's graviter comotus. He's not just disturbed, he's greatly or seriously disturbed. That's a nice little point to make sure you remember. And then there's one other, I feel like there's another, oh, here we go. In line 117, there's a word picture too. The rapitus vortex, which is a consuming whirlpool. It's around the other words in the sentence, so it's like it's consuming them. It's eating them up. Word pictures are fun to find. Okay, that's it. Ask me if you have any questions in class, and I'll be happy to go over anything.